Have you been through coercive control only to find out once you leave the battle actually isn't completely over and the healing and the closure you're looking for hasn't happened yet? Are you constantly second-guessing your thought patterns, your decision-making and your internal instincts? And are you wondering if you're ever going to get back to the normal, back to who you were before you met them? Well, then today's episode will be perfect for you because this one is all about healing and getting yourself back. If you're new here, what began as a call out for listener questions on coercive control has grown into a 6-part series episode, answering the questions alongside our amazing guest, clinical psychologist Krasi Kirova. Welcome, Krasi.
Hi, Laura. Hi, Lynn.
Hello, Krasi.
And if you haven't already hit subscribe, make sure you do so you can go and look at our other episodes around this topic. And if it's safe to do so, you can also pop over to thedivorcecourse.com.au and subscribe to our newsletter so we can keep in touch with you of our live events and programs to support you. We will potentially be having a live Q&A with Krasi as well, so if you don't want to miss that, then definitely subscribe. Krasi is a clinical psychologist, board-approved supervisor who helps people break free from the worn-out familiar patterns that keep them stuck. She draws on both her professional expertise and her own first-hand family experience, and she has a deep interest in supporting people through domestic violence, coercive control, and emotional abuse. And of course, as always, I'm joined by my amazing mum, Lynette Galvin, who is a family lawyer, an accredited specialist with more than 35 years' experience, here to walk you through the legal side.
Hello,
Hello, welcome, Mum. Across this series, we've named it, we've navigated it, we've talked about separated under one roof, coercive control, talked about money and financial abuse, we've talked about co-parenting with a coercive controller, and we've talked about proving it in court. But today is part 6. And that's where we're fully focusing on you and the person on the other side of it all. Your questions this week were all about trauma that lingers in your body, learning to trust your own judgment and making sense of what happened on the road back to yourself. So let's get into the jingle and let's get started.
Hello, I'm Laura, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years' experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom.
Just a disclaimer and a trigger warning. Obviously, we're going to be talking about coercive control and family violence and emotional abuse, and some of it may be hard for you to hear. If you feel triggered by any of this, please call Lifeline on 13 11 14. Or if you've experienced any family violence or coercive control, please call 1-800-RESPECT, 1-800-737-732. And everything we share today, just a reminder, is general information only. It is not your situation. Mum is not your lawyer. Krasi is not your psychologist. And we are just discussing the topic in a hope to give you some questions that you can go and ask your professionals. Welcome, Krasi and Mum.
Hi.
Hi,
Laura.
Hi, Krasi.
Now, I think this one's actually going to be less depressing because it's all about moving forwards. So I'm really looking forward to hearing the answers that Krasi provides today. So let's talk about the questions based around the body remembering things. So this question was from Liz, and she said, after 10 years of being told that I was the problem, how do I know which parts of my current anxiety, hypervigilance, self-doubt, and exhaustion are trauma responses and which parts are actually me?
So I think before we get to the how do I move the trauma out of my body, we have to talk about why the trauma is there and also the self-doubt, because even in that question, I can hear that self-doubt about how do I know what is the impact and the trauma itself and what resides inside of me. One of the most consistent tactics that a perpetrator uses is that they'll shift all responsibility onto the partner and they'll disarm their resistance with arguments and also with personal attacks. They'll say things constantly like you're crazy, you're unreasonable, emotional, stupid, worthless, all of that stuff. And when someone hears that kind of message repeated relentlessly and repeatedly, you cannot help but start believing it over time. And also you're going to be harmed by that consistent message. And that's what manifests as all the trauma responses that are being described here in the question. And over time, what will happen is that eventually you can't really separate the harm from the harmful message and behaviors itself. They pretty much start feeling like one and the same to a person. And I think that's what Liz is really struggling to separate. What is the harmful message and what is me? What is the harm done to me? and what is my own failing. When we think about what is the essence of trauma, a lot of times people think it's what's being done to me. That is trauma. That is the traumatic behavior. But at its core, trauma is really not what's simply done to you. It is what happens inside of you because of what is being done to you. So what Liz is describing, they're all trauma symptoms. They're not personality traits. They're not any personal qualities. Feeling hypervigilant, having anxiety, having self-doubt, that's what you're dealing with. But they can start being equated with how we think of ourselves as a person as well. And as the trauma symptoms start subsiding, and they absolutely will over time, you do start gaining more a sense of yourself and also as the person you used to be before that. So that's what I wanted to respond to this question, because I feel that's what it was asking. What is me? What is the trauma? And then I think we'll get into a bit more specifically how do I deal with some of it.
So blown my mind just then, because you're saying trauma is not what happened to you. It's what happens inside you because of what happened to you.
Yes, it's more than, of course, what happens to you is traumatic, but people react in different ways to similar situations. And it is not the long, lingering, simply memory of what happened to me. Sometimes there is not a single event that we can even remember, but it is what it does inside of me. It's how it makes me feel about myself. It's how I start seeing myself as the person. That is what trauma is. It's the internal experience that changes me as the person, not simply what happened to me.
And here's me, God, I just wanted to check, because you hear complex trauma and then you hear just trauma. So people going through coercive control, if it's relentless and all the time, is that more complex trauma?
Absolutely, yes. So complex trauma is a term that sadly is not yet recognized in the Diagnostic Statistic Manual. We use a psychologist, yes. And there's a whole range of reasons why, and I won't get into it. I think it's a lot more about politics and how insurance works in the US probably. But it is recognized in other popular diagnostic manuals. But complex trauma is when there is a series of events, and they may be a lot smaller. They may be related to even what we call attachment trauma rather than an actual event that threatens life or that puts someone in an immediately unsafe situation. And it's now recognized that the majority of trauma people experience is complex trauma. It is not what we consider as PTSD one-off trauma, which is being in a car accident, being attacked, experiencing a one-off event. And it has a much more profound long-term effect, complex trauma, compared to one-off trauma. And it can get a lot more complicated when people have experienced complex trauma or childhood trauma. When they do experience one-off trauma later on in life, it will take them a lot longer to recuperate and to deal with that one-off trauma if they came into it with no trauma background from the past. So there is a lot of interaction there as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you for explaining that. All right. Marcia said, having come from a narcissistic relationship, I find myself very triggered by dynamics at work, and I'm unsure how I can ever rebuild a personal life. I have visceral reactions at times. Talk therapy hasn't helped. I feel like my body is still in the trenches, even though it's been over a year. How can I move this out of my body?
Now, this is the big question. This is really at the heart of it. And I would say a year in trauma world, when we are talking about complex trauma, is really not a very long time in terms of recovery and healing. I know it seems like a very long time, but it isn't. It is absolutely true what they say, and there is an amazing book written, The Body Does Keep the Score. Trauma and traumatic experiences, they do get caught or trapped in a permanent hyperarousal state within the person's body. This is what we call, I used to run back in the days, groups on complex trauma at a psychiatric hospital, and one of the very foundational initial things we used to teach everyone was the concept of the window of tolerance. This is that idea that everyone exists within a state, which we call the window of tolerance, where we can problem solve effectively, we can manage our feelings, they do feel proportionate to situations. But every once in a while, for various reasons, we do go outside of that window of tolerance, either in a state of hyperarousal, so overactivation of the nervous system, we go way above the window of tolerance, or we drop underneath it into a state of what's called hypoarousal, too little activation of the nervous system. And both of these states are outside of the window of tolerance. Yeah. And people, they can cycle very quickly between them. They can jump up and then they can fall rapidly down. And that sometimes makes them feel very unstable because they don't understand why they have such huge shifts in how they're feeling. So what complex trauma does is that it permanently narrows very significantly a person's window of tolerance. So what even before might have felt manageable and not so triggering, now it's all, you're living mostly outside of your window of tolerance into usually a state of hyperarousal. So when you go, for example, to work and something quite minor happens and you're already feeling, I'm outside of that window of tolerance, I'm really hypervigilant, I'm hyperaroused, I'm having very big reactions, my thoughts are racing, I can sense my reactions are disproportionate, but I can't help myself. That is what we call being triggered in that moment. It's a very physiological reaction. You don't choose to have it. You can't choose to step out of it as well. And it is about learning to develop strategies, coping strategies, and they are two kinds. One is, how do I regulate myself in the moment so I can calm down quickly or relatively quickly from that hyperarousal state? So these are the kind of strategies we tend to call grounding, self-soothing, relaxation strategies. Yeah. So some of the well-known ones that probably people have heard or they can easily put in practice are what we call box breathing, for example. So breathe in 4 seconds and go around the circles of a square as you breathe out. Or 4-6 breathing. So breathe in for 4 seconds, hold your breath, breathe out for 6 seconds. These are effective relaxation strategies in the moment because they do activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the natural relaxation response of the body. Things like using the senses, using temperature or some other sensory system to regulate. So plunging, for example, your hands in cold water or putting an ice pack at the nape of your neck, that can be effective in immediate regulation. The 3-2-1, where you look around and you name 3 things you can see, 2 things that you can hear, and 1 thing you can smell. That's a great grounding strategy in the moment. But those are our immediate kind of get out of that hyperarousal zone strategies. But there is a second one that I think people don't give enough credit, but in some ways it's probably even more important long term. And this is about not the immediate relief in the moment, but it's about stretching out the window of tolerance. So it becomes wider. It means we can tolerate over time more. This is over time healing and really nurturing the body's nervous system so it can recalibrate over time. And this really is about much more the basics. This is when we can get adequate rest. Sleep is incredibly important for the nervous system and for kind of long-term good functioning. So adequate rest, quiet time, even quiet time in terms of not being in a loud environment, not having people talk at you, not having busy things happening around you. That is necessary. Healthy diet, just attending to your medical needs rather than ignoring them frequently. Body movement, really important as a way to recalibrate the nervous system and shift things. And it doesn't have to be going to the gym. It could be your regular practice of walking, yoga. It's really amazing. I love it because it combines those immediate regulation strategies through grounding and breathing, but also it moves the body. It's been shown to be very effective. Dancing can be amazing as well. Things like kickboxing can be so good because they restore that strength in the body.
I'd rather dance than kickbox.
There you go. You choose whatever works for you. It's important that whatever people choose is something that they can enjoy as well. They're not just doing it for the sake of doing it.
Yes. And I guess I know you've got more to say, but I'm thinking it's good to do something that you can work into your existing routine. And a little bit is okay. You know, I mean, you do find yourself sometimes going from crisis to crisis. And I hear it when I talk to our listeners. And when you say about, are you, looking after yourself? Oh, I haven't got time for that.
Yes, but then it's going to have a very significant impact and you're not going to be able to keep pushing forward if you're not making these small steps to recalibrate on a regular basis. And also when you do these more basic daily strategies and you genuinely put the time and effort into them, over time, it really accumulates. It's not going to give you some immediate relief today, right now, in the moment, but it means that you are going to have bigger capacity over time to deal with the same daily stressors.
And so it opens that window of tolerance for you. Does it open it?
Exactly. It widens it.
Yes.
So you're dealing with a much wider space. And also, I think it's important for people, and that's what I teach very often my clients to understand, is that the way physiology works is that you can very quickly go from 0 to 100. It doesn't take much. And you can very quickly go up there into that quite extreme hyperarousal. But no one in the history of mankind very quickly came down from that. It doesn't happen in the space of seconds. It can happen over quite an extended period of time, and it can happen very gradually. You come down a little bit, then you stay there, you come down a little bit more. But the wider window of tolerance you have, the easier it will be to come down.
That's a great life
So
strategy.
for all of those people like me who find yoga and breathing all a bit boring and you just kind of think it's woo-woo crazy,
no, it's not.
It does work.
It does work.
At the Calm app, I force myself to do the meditations for 10 minutes at lunchtime. And I thought, this is stupid. So I put a red light mask on at the same time, thought at least I'm doing something. But in a couple of months later, I did notice I was able to be less stressed and I didn't feel like I was running around. And when something popped up unexpectedly, like I had to pick up the kids from school for being sick, I didn't immediately freak out or, so it does work. It does work. You've just got to be patient.
It does work, and your body doesn't care about what you believe. There is a way our nervous systems are wired.
Well, it's science. I think that's what people need to understand. There is science behind it. Okay,
I read somewhere, I read somewhere, no one can get through 4 rounds of this sort of breathing before they fall asleep. And I think, right. And I don't think I've ever got to 4, to the 4th. and that's one where I think you breathe in for 4, hold for 6, and then breathe out for 8. It's kind of a version of that box breathing. But you do it at least twice, and I don't know what happens after that because I'm
All right, let's get to Sia's question. What are the best sensory tools to relearn self-regulation after leaving fear seems daily, and I continue to feel hypervigilant 11 months after leaving? I'm still involved in legal proceedings and experience systems abuse from organisations meant to help and support. Do weighted hug toys help?
I would say one of the most important conditions for healing is safety and stability, or at least a perceived sense of safety and stability. And these are very patchy and very inconsistent, especially during that early post-separation period and when you're going through legal proceedings, because the reality is that you're not safe and stable yet. And that makes the kind of the healing process a lot slower. And I would say even you're not still into the healing process, you're still into the survival process at that point. And I think to the question directly about do weighted hug toys help, I would be distinguishing between practices and tools. So a weighted blanket or a hug toy, those are tools, and they have very limited kind of use. They can be very helpful, but it's quite limited what they can do for us. Whereas it's practices that I think really the focus should be on. And a practice could be, again, a practice of daily movement. A practice could be of relaxation and just giving myself 20 minutes with a good book, sitting in a quiet room, or taking the space when I come back from work, and rather than straight away jump into doing things, I give myself 15 minutes to settle down with a cup of tea and do some. Those are practices. So self-regulation and self-soothing are best achieved through those various practices that we discussed already in the previous question. Yes, tools can help, but again, very limited. But also, it's not just about the practices we do on our own. Regulation comes very much from the people around us. There is a reason why we want to be in a company with someone. We need to debrief with someone. Just the physical presence of someone in a room with us when we're going through a difficult time is calming and soothing, because bodies co-regulate. You need another body near you
even
to
if
help
it's a
your
dog.
own.
Zach,
It doesn't. Yes.
Zach, do you mean
Yes.
Do you mean like your heartbeats match or something so it can slow your heartbeat down? Like, what do you mean?
Yes, it means literally that I settle down, my nervous system settles down when I'm in the presence of another being who's settled.
Okay.
We know that has a very significant calming effect. Yeah. So that in itself already is a calming strategy. It's very different when you're sitting very panicky and fearful, crying by yourself alone in a room. And if you're doing the same thing and experiencing, but with another person next to you and holding your hand, that physical touch is incredibly soothing. And that's why we've said, you go to mediation, for example, bring a support person. They might not say a single word, but it's that calming, soothing, co-regulating presence of a safe person next to you that has such a big impact. So it's not about just the individual strategies we use. It's also the people around us, the friends, the family, the community. I want to point out as well that Emma Katz's research on coercive control in the lives of mothers and children also very clearly showed that mothers and children can co-regulate each other. They really provide each other that kind of support that helps both of them going through the healing journey. So it's not just parents providing that for their children. Children can also provide that through kindness, through giving a hug, through just holding your hand, giving you a smile in the room.
Yeah.
It has the same sort of effect.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Lovely.
I love that.
Yeah. I love
Okay,
it.
let's talk about learning to trust yourself again. So these questions that came through from these ladies, it's all about the judgment, making sure you don't make the same mistakes or, rebuilding the faith in your judgments.
You're invited to our free webinar. Whether you're stuck at the beginning of deciding to divorce or you're struggling to find your way through the legal jargon and fear of the unknown of the legal process, we are here to empower you to take control. Join us to learn what steps you can take, followed by a live Q&A where you get Lynn, my amazing mum, and family law accredited specialist to answer your questions. All you have to do is go to www.thedivorcecourse.com.au and click on Reserve My Seat. We'll see you there. Hurry, spaces are limited, so don't miss out. Register today.
So Lynn's question, 2 N's. Obviously, these aren't their real names, but yes, I have been separated for almost 14 years. Divorced only one. Long story. How do I ever trust anyone again if living with someone who emotionally manipulated me for 30 years? I'm lonely, but I don't trust my judgment on whether a man is genuine anymore. Poor Lynn.
How awful, but also how common. Trust in others is hugely compromised when a person experiences this level of betrayal and harm over a long period of time. And what I'm hearing here is not just the struggle to trust another man or another potential partner, it's also very much the struggle to trust myself as well. That I can see the signs early enough, that I can trust my judgment as a solid one, that I'm not going to repeat a pattern over again, that I just won't be fooled by another malicious person. And also, do I have the trust that I would be capable of dealing with the situation if I find myself? I thought what I wanted to say here, and I've actually heard something really good from Esther Perel. I have a lot of respect for her. She's an American couples therapist, but what she says about trust is this, and I think it's very relevant here. So she says, trust is the active engagement with the unknown. Trust is risky. It's vulnerable. It's a leap of faith. The more we trust, the farther we are able to venture. And how relevant is that when we talk about this? Because when we have been badly hurt, of course, we need protection. And that protection needs to stay on for a very long time after, because we don't want to get hurt again in a similar way. But over time, that really starts presenting a dilemma to the person. Now, how much do I desire to reconnect again and maybe to seek love again? Says, how do I overcome the fear of going into the uncertain and venturing out into what feels very dangerous? Does that desire for connection ever overcome the fear of the uncertain and the unknown? And that's a different question for each person. That might happen in a different way. But I want to also say this, that there will always be uncertainty in life. We live with uncertainty every single day of our lives in so many different situations, and sometimes we barely think about that uncertainty. Sometimes it really overwhelms us. And so the ability to trust is the thing that gives us the courage to explore, to experiment, and to travel further. I would also say, let's not think of trust in ultimate or absolute terms. It's not like either I fully and 100% trust or I have no trust whatsoever. In reality, trust is never just, it doesn't come in one go. Even when I have new clients coming into my therapy room, and this is, of course, supposed to be a safe place, I tell them, I don't expect you to trust me just because I'm your therapist and you're in this room. Trust needs to be earned over time. You need to see it in action. It needs to build up in small increments, and it needs to be proven in various situations for it to be meaningful. And so it's the same. Don't feel like you have to become this fully trustful person in order to go out and venture into the unknown. Just a little bit at a time. Let it build. Let it be proven as well. But also at some point, and that's going to be a very individual point for each individual person, you are going to have to accept a certain level of unknown and vulnerability in order to venture out if you're seeking more connections.
And
I guess,
sorry. From just a practical point of view, if people have come out of a very bad relationship like that, they've had that experience, you're never going to be exactly that same person that you were at the beginning. And so you can trust yourself a little more because you're probably a little more wise.
Yes, that's such a good point, Lynn.
And I think that people who have been in coercive controlling relationships, their greatest fear is just they're going to stuff up and fall for another person that is coercively controlling and be stuck in exactly the same relationship just with a different person. And that goes into Lean's and Anonymous's question both. And it's how can someone who is intelligent, caring and capable end up in more than one coercive controlling relationship? You know, what vulnerabilities or patterns makes this possible? And how can survivors recognize and break those patterns before entering another one? And Anonymous is how can I future-proof myself from falling into coercive control ever again? Like it's the kind of the same question. What things can people be doing, Krasi, that are listening today to protect themselves from being in that situation again?
So first to the first one about how can someone who is intelligent, caring, can fall and even more into one of those relationships? They can. And unfortunately, being a caring or capable person or intelligent or even self-sufficient and autonomous doesn't inoculate you in any way against the perpetrator. In fact, sometimes it can make you a much more attractive target to them. And we discussed quite a long time ago in one of the episodes that it is especially those positive qualities like kindness, agreeableness, the caring nature, empathy that do become weaponized and used against you in these relationships. So not only do they not protect you, not only do they make you a good target, but they also can be used against you. You know, sometimes I've thought about the reason why a relationship between two pronounced narcissistic people is never going to last very long, because what is there to keep the glue between them? There is a very good analogy that has actually become the basis of a program that is for working with domestic survivors in Australia, which is called the Shark Cage. It was developed by a psychologist, an Australian psychologist. Her name is Ursula Benstead. And it's such a nice analogy, I think, that goes to that question of how can I protect myself and break those patterns. And the analogy goes something like this. If we all imagine ourselves being fishes swimming in the sea, and there's all kinds of variety in the sea and all kinds of different sort of little fishies, and some of them are friendly Nemo fishes and some of them are shark. And if you're swimming in the sea, eventually you're going to come across a shark. It's inevitable. Now, why a shark may go for you is nothing about you. It's because a shark does that. A shark just eats other fishes, so it's a given that the shark will go after you. But what will protect you against that shark is whether you have a good shark cage around you that serves as protection. And that shark cage can be made of my self-esteem, my ability to set healthy boundaries, the social network I have around me, my ability to pick out certain signs. All of these things are bars in that shark cage, and the more bars and the stronger bars you have, the more protection you do have when that shark kind of circles around you. So what we're doing is we're wanting to strengthen that shark cage rather than somehow future-proof that you would never come across a shark in your life. That's probably not realistic.
That's true. Yeah.
And what that shark cage looks for each person. So what your own patterns are or what your own vulnerabilities might be, that is so individual, that you can't just talk for everyone. It's about working on that shark cage and strengthening it.
Yes.
And going to the notion that there is no certainty and 100% future proofing for anything in life. So that is not really a solvable problem. If I'm trying to find a way to guarantee for myself 100% protection in the future, I can't do that. But maybe what I would rephrase the question to something that's more doable and solvable is, what do I need to know and put in place when I start dating again so that I can recognize a narcissistic personality early on and I can exit the relationship as quickly as possible, right? That's a solvable problem.
Yeah.
You can solve that. 100% future-proof certainty is not something you can do, but that is something you can. So
there's actually a guy called Dustin Poynter, DUSTINPOYNTER, and he's called the red flag guy. And I watch him, and people send videos to him to watch, and it's like sometimes like a man comes home and gives this girl a present, and the interaction, he watches the video, and if it's red flag, he runs across the oval with the red flag saying why it's bad. And if it's green flag, he runs around the oval saying, and it is hilarious to watch, but it's actually really educational because you're watching it and you're going, he's right. That is a bit of a worry because he shouldn't have said that. He should have said this, or he should have been caring about that person's feelings. And so if you are really confused as to what is a good relationship anymore, jump on his Instagram and literally watch some of his videos, and then your scenario might be there, or you could send him your scenario and he can run around and tell you if it's a green flag or a red flag. I'm only just saying that
place.
Dustin Poynter, and it's hilarious. But you should see some of the videos that people put up and the crap some of these women put up with. And to have another man sit there and explain why it's so horrible, and to see the woman in the video just completely take the abuse and the manipulation and not say a word, and everybody else is like, I can't believe this is happening. Think about what happened to you in the past, and you probably, maybe some of you are on those videos, but that guy is actually a really good way to educate yourself a little bit about some of the red flags that are in dating these days.
Can I go a little bit beyond that? So even what someone can do is you can make your own list of red flags. Again, they would be quite individual. So if you can evaluate what you already know about a really bad relationship and you make your own list of absolute no-goes, it's literally, if this comes up in a conversation, if this person does that, then I'm out of there as quick as possible.
Yes.
And you just, you commit to sticking to it, even though you might be smitten, even though someone might, look really great initially. I think that helps. But here's a few more things I would suggest, actually, on that way to future-proofing as much as possible, not 100%.
Yes.
So educating yourself on what this personality entails and how they may present early on. I think that's important because that's not something everyone knows unless they had really bad experience. Also, just reviewing everything already that you have learned from your own past relationships. So what is my own past history? When did things really start going badly? How was I reacting at the time? And how maybe did I not see it early on? What would I consider was healthy versus unhealthy behaviors in this relationship so that I can use this knowledge that's tailor-made to me? Also, I would definitely say making sure that, especially early on in new relationships, you're debriefing regularly with friends or family or a therapist, someone about the relationship, so you're getting that external perspective quite early on. That can be very helpful. I would say kind of testing them out a little bit early on. And what I mean is just seeing how do they react in certain situations, particularly when you're maintaining autonomy.
Yes.
If I'm, what do they seem to override it, even if it might seem in a positive way? Oh, why would you need to go there? Let's do this thing together. Yeah. And they're always trying to talk you out of things?
Yes.
Or are they perfectly fine with your autonomy? If you say no to them about something, what happens then? If you become upset about something, how do they react? So test them and notice this reaction. And again, just having that own inventory of what my own internal alarm bells should be. If I'm starting to withdraw from friends and spend very little time with them.
Yes.
If I'm starting to keep our arguments a secret from other people, if I'm moving in too quickly,
Yes.
those might be my own internal alarm bells, and that's what I need to use. On a personal level, because, and I don't want to go into my personal history, but I've had experiences from my own family, and I knew what my own alarm bell was, which was the feeling of walking on eggshells.
Yes.
I knew it so well. I knew my body exactly how it felt. I could feel my stomach just sinking and having that deep feeling. And so I made a commitment very early on in my life that if any man ever made me feel this way around them, I don't care how good looking they are. I don't care how wonderful they are. I'm out of there and I'm not asking any more questions. And that has served me very well through life.
Good idea, yeah.
Yeah, everyone needs to tune in and decide what are my own alarm bells that I'm
So on a positive note, if you have, and I'd say most people listening to this have experienced walking on eggshells, you know what that feeling is like. So unlike some poor unsuspecting person who's out in the dating world right now who's never done that, you'll be able to notice that. And maybe you could even, Krasi, ask your friends and family to point out if they think there's something going on or if there's something wrong.
They often can spot things way before we can, because we're trying to, in our hopeful hopes, we just ignore things or we explain them away. We don't want to see what sometimes is right in front of us, but other people see it.
And sometimes I think the person who's perpetrating the abuse, if they get wind that your girlfriends or family are wake up to him or her behaviours, they will try and isolate you from those people who might point out the obvious. And I think the big red flag right at the beginning for me was just moving far too fast in the early stages.
Yes.
Wanting to get engaged, wanting to get married when we're barely, been together. And we have a theory, don't we, Laura, that they can't keep being nice long enough, so they have to get you married or into moving in quickly before the mask drops.
Okay, well, before we move on to, say, the making sense of it and letting go questions, Krasi, you've been talking about this whole time and the listeners have been sending in some fantastic responses. Can you tell us a little bit about what we're asking from anyone here today who would like to make some changes in Australia?
Yes, I want to take this opportunity with our last episode to make the final call to every listener out there to let me know, to submit, and we'll put the link to that form, but to submit their feedback, their experiences about how have they experienced the profession of therapists and psychologists. What have they found helpful? What have they not found helpful? What do they want us as a profession to know about coercive control and domestic violence? Because I want to use that knowledge in any future training and also in a conference that I would be presenting in a few months to other psychologists in Australia on coercive control. And I don't want us to just be learning the dry theory. I want real people's experience to come through, and I want that to filter in our training. And I have to say, we've received so many amazing responses. I've read every single one of them. I want people to know that whatever they've already put the effort to do, I've read it. It is absolute gold. There's so much wisdom that comes out of it, and I'm going to put every effort to make something deeply meaningful and useful going forward. But yes, please submit any and all your thoughts and experiences.
This, guys, is your opportunity to be part of something quite good, because, Krasi, you were saying that most research on coercive control, most studies on coercive control, they only talk to like 8 people, or they only have eight things, and we've already got so many that this could become something quite
close
amazing.
to 100 now. Yes, most research, because it needs to be deep and meaningful. It involves interviews with people. It's not just statistical data, because that's not meaningful enough. But because of that depth, you can't do these kind of interviews with 100 people. You can only do it. It's one small batch at a time. So this is really providing so much amazing information.
So if you would like to be a part of that, this is your second last week to get on there. We will be sending an email out, so make sure you're part of the divorce.com.au. Go and subscribe to our newsletter. But you can also just scroll down the bottom of the video you're watching or the podcast you're listening to into the show notes, and there will be a link there. It's type form. You just go in there and there's some questions to answer. If you don't feel like you can answer all of them, even if you just answer a couple, the more data we have, the better. But if you can take the time to fill it all in, that would be amazing. All right. let's get into making sense of it and letting go, because I think people who go through this, it is their entire world for so long, and they can never see a way out. They never see that there's going to be the day that they step out and that person's no longer there and that behavior's no longer there. But people get there. They do get out. They do move on. But then they kind of freak out because they're like, wait, how do I get the closure that I need? So Jay's question, Krasi, and Mum, I'm going to ask you as well. I'm 6 months out of a 12-year relationship characterized by coercive control. Will I ever understand why he did this? Or do I need to find a way to move on regardless? And how to protect myself from revenge debt? So there's a little bit of financial stuff in there. But sorry, Krasi, did you want to tell us a little bit, how does she get that closure?
Yes, I think understanding is a very important part of getting, not maybe necessarily closure, but being able to move forward, because it is so important, because it does provide a counter narrative to the ones that they have fed you for so long. And the narrative they had fed you is that it's all your fault, you've done something wrong, I haven't done anything, and so on, you're worthless, and so on. So you have to have some different kind of explanation for what happened. That's what makes it so important. But also, understanding is always subjective. You won't ever get realistically the honest truth from them as to why they have done what they have done. Like, they won't tell you, and even if they do, I don't think it's going to be a good version of it. So you are going to have to accept a version of truth that makes sense to you. And that's going to most likely come from yourself. Having such a version and being able to anchor yourself is what helps. It's not about having some ultimate truth that's going to stand in court. That's not the understanding we are talking about. It's really, to move forward, it's really helpful to find an explanation that is grounded in reality, that does make sense of the available information, and also is self-affirming. That is the kind of understanding and explanation people need to move forward, not some kind of search for the ultimate truth that their abusive ex is also agreeing or enforcing. That's not what you need.
Then they're not going to take it on board.
This is Zara's question, is it possible for victims of coercive control to become so conditioned by the perpetrator that even after separation, they continue to think and feel and behave in ways that the perpetrator expected or wanted? And if so, why does this happen? And what approach can help survivors overcome these patterns and regain their sense of autonomy?
What a good question.
Yeah.
And I think the best answers here can be found also on the research on cult. Coercive control, cults, because coercive control is, I think someone called it a cult of one.
Yeah.
But the very same principles operate. One of the most enduring consequences of both coercive control and of coming out of cult is that the controlling person no longer needs to be physically present to continue to exert influence on the other. So the survivor will continue to carry over the worldview and the rules from their perpetrator within themselves, so they'll internalize that. And coercive control really gradually over time keeps a person's reality. It teaches them which thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are acceptable and which aren't. Over time, the nervous system really becomes so highly attuned to your perpetrator's needs and moods and expectations. And so you start automatically self-censoring yourself. You're always at the back of your mind, you're thinking, but how would they react? Am I being unreasonable or selfish? What if I'm wrong? So their voice, what they've conditioned, they don't even need to be there close to you. They don't need to have any physical proximity anymore. And that conditioning still lingers on for a very long time after, which is exactly the same as what people struggle when they come out of a cult. It's not like they walk away and suddenly they become completely new and they see the world in different ways. They have to battle sometimes for years.
And we see that when people come out of they're divorced and they're going through property settlement or children's matters, and they're still thinking about how their ex will behave or what their ex thinks or what their ex wants them to do.
Yes.
And that fear of getting in trouble can still be happening during all of that.
Even though you're a grown adult, you can still feel that way. Is it a kind of brainwashing, really, Krasi?
Yes, it is. It is absolutely brainwashing.
So what can people do to overcome that?
Yeah. It actually takes time, and it's not something that you just rebuild in a month or even in a few months. But when you leave the relationship effectively, what you need to leave behind is an entire psychological reality as well.
Wow. Yeah.
That's what it really is about. It's not just living physically that person, it's living the psychological reality they created for you during that whole relationship. So some of the steps in reclaiming that agency and perspective are really starting to rebuild trust in yourself. So seeking out and noticing all the instances when you need to make decisions and then evaluating realistically the outcomes when you did make those decisions. Was it a good decision? Did I do the right thing? How do I know? Really start paying attention to that and start encouraging and seeking out the opportunities to be making, even if they're very small decisions, even if it's the decision is where do we go with a friend for dinner, and people might easily say, oh, you choose, I don't know. No, that's the decision-making point. You stop yourself and you ask, what do I feel like having today? And express that. Wow. Those are the small building blocks of rebuilding that trust and autonomy. Psychoeducation helps, of course, understanding the dynamics of what happened, and the brainwashing and the process of really indoctrinating you will help you reinterpret behaviors that occurred through a different lens now. Another big one is really starting to learn to tolerate guilt, because it will help you increase your own autonomy. Very often when people say no to things, when they have to pay more attention, when I was talking about expanding your window of tolerance and the daily practices you need to engage, that's going to bring up a lot of guilt, I think, for some people, that it feels like selfish behavior, or I should be looking only after my children, or I should be doing all these things. But at the same time, you have to sit with some of that guilt. You have to tolerate it, because otherwise you will never be able to do the things you need to do for yourself. It can feel morally wrong, and that's why the guilt is there. That if I do something for myself, for example, if I say no to this person, if I refuse, or if I express a strong opinion, that's morally wrong. It's not. It is part of healthy agency and healthy self-affirming behavior. So tolerate some guilt, but step out and do the things you need. And also even reconnecting with your own values and identity. Just starting to really rediscover your own preferences, your own beliefs, your own needs, what your aspirations are for yourself before someone came in and squashed all of that for you.
Sounds like you've got some anyone listening.
Yes.
And I do on the recover steps you can take, and you gave us some steps there as well. So I think that we'll put that link in the show notes as well, because it might be quite helpful.
Do you think, though, Laura and Krasi, we get a lot of people who I think feel more capable, I guess, of moving on from a narcissistic type or an abusive type when they see all of the patterns in other people's partners, and they go, oh, hang on, it's one of those sort of things. And do you think so? It helps, because otherwise you don't know it's abnormal. It
helps enormously, because it helps with that different interpretation and that constant doubting, niggling thing. But is it me? Was it, did I cause this? What about me was the reason why all of this happens? Whereas when they see it, oh no, they did it with other people, it just really validates that it is them. It's not me. But that's almost like proof.
It is.
That they see it as proof.
That gets us to the next question from Melds. And she said, what I'm grappling with in my head is untangling the part I played. I can now see that I brought a great deal of need for acceptance, and possibly this is largely my rejection sensitivity. It doesn't negate that he used it for his benefit and still won't see me as a deserving individual. So what do you do for people who are blaming themselves about, their part in what they think they played?
I think everyone is blaming themselves. I don't think it's only the abuser that doesn't blame themselves for everything, but everyone else is left to carry all the blame and the responsibility.
We're all getting therapy, and I think
they always say the only person, the kids and the other person, but the only person who's not getting therapy is the person who's caused everybody else to get therapy.
I think it's not really a legal question, but I think Mel. I think a shark's going to be a shark, and that's what sharks do. And this narcissist is going to do what he does to someone else. It wasn't you. It's all them.
Yes, and directly to males, it's not even a question. I think it's more of a statement or a comment, but everyone has vulnerabilities. There isn't a single person that walks into a relationship with no vulnerabilities, no past history, or no sensitive spots or struggles that they bring to the relationship. So everyone comes in. The difference is that in healthy relationships, when they're safe and they're mutually nurturing, it's these vulnerabilities and sensitivities that they become soothed, they become settled, they become significantly healed over time because of the safe nature and nurturing nature of that healthy relationship. But when you go into a relationship with a perpetrator, they become exploited, they become used as ammunition or tools of manipulation, and so they grow bigger over time. So, for example, if they see that you come in struggling to feel loved or accepted, they will attack you, especially on that front. You know, they'll become very inconsistent in the way they respond to you. They won't return calls. They won't tell you where they're going. They won't show commitment. They'll tell you you're not attractive enough. Anything that makes you even more unloved and even more likely to be rejected. So it's not the problem that you're coming into with vulnerabilities in a relationship, because everyone has that. It is the problem what they do with those vulnerabilities. Healthy relationships heal us and make us grow stronger, and unhealthy relationships just completely destroy us over time.
Mel, if you went into a relationship with that partner and he had vulnerabilities, you didn't use them against him. So it's right. Kind of like,
exactly.
It's just because you've got something doesn't mean people act on using that. So it's not your fault.
No.
It's not the vulnerability, but just to add another point, but the patterns should and can be recognized. So patterns are different from people's personal vulnerabilities.
Yes.
It's the way patterns form because we try and deal with those vulnerabilities, but the way we deal is that we just recreate and reenact over and over the same sort of situation. So I think it's important for people to have awareness of their own personal patterns, and they would be individual to every person. And it's that awareness and that knowledge that will help us in the future to recognize when we're starting to fall once again into a familiar pattern, so that we can step out of it. And that is so difficult. And I always tell to the people I work with, patterns are safe and familiar. It's not because they're healthy that we keep repeating them. It's because they feel safe and known. And people will always tend to choose what they know versus what is healthy for them. So that's why it's so important to have a deeper awareness and to be able to tolerate the discomfort that comes with trying to break out of a familiar pattern.
Okay. All right. So a little bit of homework in that section for you guys. Now, these last couple of questions are all about the road back, how long it takes, where to turn, and finding yourself again. And again, Krasi, I know some of these questions are going to be impossible to answer, but let's have a try.
Yes.
So this is from Kate. How long does it take for a victim survivor to truly recover from emotional abuse and coercive control?
How long is a piece of string? But I would say, when we talk about recovery, it's not like it's some kind of final destination that you just get to and then it's happily ever after, like in a Hollywood movie. That is not real life and how it works, because realistically, throughout life, anyone is still, whether they fully recovered or not, they will still continue to face new challenges, new things will come up in your life, and you have to keep dealing with them. And they will open old wounds, they will re-trigger painful memories. So it's not like you can just get to a point where you never have to deal with these things, because that's not how it is in life. So maybe a better notion than simply thinking of recovery as a final destination is just rebuilding. Because when you're rebuilding, it means you can always keep building more on top of something. You're simply remaking what maybe has been destroyed, but maybe you're remaking it into something new. It's becoming something different.
And it's a progress.
Yes, there is an element of progress. There is an element of growth. We don't just talk about post-traumatic stress and trauma. We also talk about post-traumatic growth.
Yeah.
That out of trauma, people can really grow. They can reshape. They can rebuild themselves. They can find new meanings that wasn't there before. And it's come now because of the trauma they have experienced. So it's not, trauma recovery is not about never being affected or completely moving past it. It is about reintegrating this into your new self so that you can move forward in life-affirming ways. This is what is recovery.
Jeez. Okay. So don't be hard on yourself, guys. There's no time frame. It's just you've got to keep on keeping on. And like you said, Krasi, I've seen so many people, like in particular, that child, he's a adult now, his name was Connor, and he was at that
Connor Cole,
and he was at the convention we were at about family violence,
his experience,
and he'd been through all this horrible stuff, and obviously it still affected him because he spoke on stage about it, and it still affected him, but you could tell how strong and how much he'd grown out of that experience.
And what he was doing with it, because he's doing incredible advocacy work and it's causing real changes in the legal system. He's speaking, he's educating people. I know he's written a children's book as well about coming out of the shadows. So that is the essence of post-traumatic growth, where you can make something meaningful with it. And just one other thing that occurred to me, when we were talking about trust, and I said trust is not an absolute thing. It's not like either you trust or you don't. It comes in these small increments. The same applies to healing. It's not an absolute. Either you're healed or you're not. There might be a certain part of your life that is so much better now, while there is another part of life that is still very difficult. They all matter. They're all important. So you might be going through post-separation abuse and dealing with all the legal stuff, and that might be very difficult. But on the other hand, you have much more freedom and connection with your children. You can see them smiling. You can do all these things you couldn't do before. So it's about seeing all the different parts of your life and being able to recognize, yes, there's still a struggle here and this is still very difficult, but look at this other part where I have the autonomy. I have now a connection with these people. I feel safety. I can see my family every week and we can have a good time. All things that weren't happening before.
So after a separation, a long time after a separation, sometimes I've seen clients they think they're doing really well, and then the other person throws a sort of a grenade over the fence, particularly if they get a new relationship. And one of the things that I'd like listeners to hear is that one of the things they do is say, I never really loved you. This is true love. I never really loved you. And that can be devastating for people. So I want people to know it's actually part of their ammunition, and there's I guess they're telling themselves lies to make themselves feel better. What do you think? Yeah.
Oh, no, look, I think what Krasi was saying about having a look at, because a lot of people listening today will be going through the family court system or the mediations, etc. And it is really hard to train yourself to look at the positives of the situation. But you're right, like there's things that are so much better just from immediate leaving, and they're the things you need to focus on to kind of remind yourself. And in that episode we did with Sonia on the 3 anchors, and she talked about having a cup, like a mug, and every time you have a cup of tea in the morning or coffee, every sip you take, you've got to think about something you're grateful for. And if you can't think of anything at all, just be grateful that the sky's blue, And she said over time, that practice, like Krasi's talking, that practice of gratitude and doing that little practice for yourself every day will help train your brain to look at the positives. Because if you've been in those kind of relationships, you hardly ever train to look at the positives. They're constantly pointing out the negatives about you. So
yes, and it does reflect a very difficult reality, but I'm a very strong proponent of the idea is that life is what you focus on. There's so many things always in front of you, and where I choose to turn my attention and what I'm choosing to see and make that the most important part, then that is going to cover all my experiences. And that is something in our control. We can actively choose to refocus attention somewhere else, to see things that maybe we are not seeing, and maybe even not see certain things that are there as well.
Okay, and we're going to lead to our last question for today from Tina. What services or individuals can help navigate victims of coercive control? I don't understand how or what happened to me occurred, and it's very difficult to articulate to family members and others. Surely there's some specific organisations that can help us heal and move forward. So, Krasi, where can Tina turn to? Are there any services that we could mention that I can add in the resources?
There's so many services. The difficulty is that they are very regional specific. So depending not only on which state you're in, which city you're in, even which neighborhood you're in, there will be different ones you can access and you can get referral to. So it's hard to say for Tina, but what I would say is that they do exist. There are plenty of them. I'm constantly surprised almost on a weekly basis when I hear about what someone has been able to access that I had no idea. And I think, oh my gosh, what a great idea that is. But then it might be quite, again, regional specific, and it may not exist for another client if they live in another place. But that's why it's so important to call whatever just a basic Google search can give you an idea of what a local service is. And what they do is they do referrals from there on. So, for example, I'm based in Melbourne, and in Victoria, we have what's called the Orange Door, which is now the centralized point where from there on, they'll make referrals to appropriate organizations for that person. They'll set up case management if that's needed. They will link them with services that can provide things like trauma groups. So you can do body trauma work in a group like that. They'll provide parent and child services. So I've heard of people accessing groups where you can go with your young child. You don't need the permission of the other parent to access these services. So that's amazing for trauma recovery. And you can get 10, 15 sessions of art therapy with a young child where the parent is. So they have all of these different programs available. So it's definitely worth asking. There are also things on a national level. So Laura, when we went to that conference, we remember about the What Were You Wearing organization, and they have these, they call them survival healing groups that are kind of volunteer run and they're open to anyone. So things like that are also available. So it really is about just having a look, asking, starting from somewhere, even calling the 1-800-RESPECT number. They would have, again, referral options for your particular region. So that's also a starting point. Of course, as a psychologist, I'm going to say therapy is always helpful, but, it would be helpful with someone who really understands coercive control and abuse. I think that can make quite a significant difference, but there's plenty of people who do and understand it. It doesn't just have to be a psychologist. There are plenty of really good counselors and therapists as well. There's other kind of practitioners. I know people have told me kinesiologists have been very helpful. Going to mindfulness retreats has been very helpful.
And the eye movement is very helpful.
EMDR,
EMDR.
That's called eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy, which can be very beneficial for trauma experience.
What's that?
Yes, so tapping that's just a type of, how do you call it, a type of practice that a lot of, including my reflexologist, was using it as well. So
my psychologist says you hook your thumbs like this, and then you just tap like this, side to side.
Yes. It's the butterfly. They call it the butterfly.
And it kind of works like EMDR because your body's switching from side to side, and it's really calming. It's really calming. So if you ever see me doing that in the shopping centre, you'll know why.
We'll know why.
You're having a moment.
Dancing can do the same thing. Someone signing up for salsa lessons can have exactly the same impact because that's rhythm, that's moving the body. So there are so many different. I've heard of people joining a book club, and that's been really good because it's gotten them back into reading. It's gotten them socialized. It's gotten them feeling like they're part of something. So there's a lot of things that heal that don't have to be formal practices, but they will have that effect.
Oh, how lovely.
Well, that brings us to an end of our 6-part series on coercive control. I want to thank you all for having the courage to share your questions with us. I also want to thank Krasi for coming on and helping us answer all of these questions. Of course, Mum as well. And look, I hope in some way it's made you feel a little more reassured about the path that you're facing, a little less crazy, a little less second-guessing yourself. And hopefully you've got the courage and the confidence now to a little bit more to move forwards through whatever it is that you're facing, potentially in the family court or in mediation or negotiations, to remind yourself that you can do this, you are capable, and you are not what happened to you, and that you can become someone that you can't even imagine yet. Like you can't see the possibilities when you're in the thick of it. But if you try these practices, this work that Krasi's talked about, and just working on yourself, to get yourself to a space. And I promise you, as we do get emails from you and messages from you from time to time as you unsubscribe from us because you no longer need us, telling us how much you loved it and how much you have grown and the stories you tell me about the things you're doing now and the things you would never have dreamt of doing. So my biggest dream for all of you listening today is that's going to be you as well. And thank you, Krasi, for helping them on their journey to get to that place.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been such a pleasure. It's been so eye-opening for me as well, but also just to be on that journey and help people feel like they're not alone in all of this. I mean, we are all humans. We all have our own experiences. We are all walking the same path as you. You're not alone through what's happening. And please, to everyone listening at the moment, know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There are people around you. There is a life after all of this as well. And it's much better.
Yes. And absolutely worth the work to get yourself back or get a new version of you to where you are. And we're, of course, available for more support through the divorcecourse.com.au. We've got webinars coming up, live webinars. We do live Q&As with Krasi from time to time as well. And also we have our online course that helps you get through your divorce, negotiations, property settlements, children's negotiations without going to court. And we also have a course available very soon that helps you get through court as well. And Krasi, sometimes you do workshops as well. Can you tell us a little bit about your workshops?
Oh, thank you. Yes, I occasionally try and run, so probably a little bit later in this year, I'll try and run it again. My workshop called Understanding Emotional Abuse is an emotional abuse, which is specifically for women that are navigating everything we talked about, whether they're still in the relationship, whether they're out and and it's my way of trying to create that safe space and that sense of belonging and validation so that they can learn and hear each other's experiences and they can continue forward as part of a group and not just on their own.
Yes.
All right, Mum, what would you
between each other? Yes.
What would you embroider on a cushion, Mum, for this one?
This does sound a bit bossy, but I wrote it down while Krasi was talking, and it's rest now or crash later.
Okay. Okay.
It's a bit directive, but I'm not a social worker or a psychologist or
reasonable. It's reasonable.
And if we had two cushions, as you put another cushion next to Mum's, what would you embroider on a cushion?
You're not alone. There's so much more than you think there is out there, and your experience is by all means not individual to you or it says anything about you. And you're not alone. And one day you will find those connections and you will feel all the love and all the kindness from others.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. And we will see you next week, Mum. And Krasi, we'll see you soon, I hope. Thank you. Bye.
Bye,
Thank
Krasi.
you. Bye.
Bye, Laura.
Bye.
You. Thank you.
If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording.